Woo! All right, that's exciting. Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Joel. Delighted to have you here. Thanks for moving in. My dream of having people sitting on the floor is coming true soon, hopefully. So, anyway, thanks for joining us and worshiping together, and we're going to grow in faith a little bit together. I also want to say thank you to those of you who were here yesterday serving, and just we had a work day for 3 or 4 hours, and you came and you trimmed shrubs and pressure washed and ran cables and did just a bunch of things. We had people literally scrubbing all the baseboards in the church. That's a fun job to do that. But anyway, doing touch-up paint and cleaning. And really, it's just to be good stewards. It's to take care of this beautiful property. And so can we just give those a hand who are here to help us out? And yeah. All right, and if it works for you, and I know a lot of you have, kids are doing sports and you have all kinds of things going on, but if it works for you next time, come. And it's a great way to connect with people too, and we have a good time, and also usually have donuts, which is, the first one's good, second one, we'll send you to the hospital. But anyway, so, let me just say a quick prayer, and then we'll dive in. Father, thank you for our time together. Thank you for those who serve, who love you, love this church, love each other, love the community. And so grateful for those who serve, for those who contribute, give, bless, pray, all the things going on, God. It makes this church and churches special when your people are invigorated and ignited and excited to be about your business. So regardless of who we are, regardless of where we're at with you, I pray that you would speak to us. So many times we get to give back to you, but now's the time we want to receive from you, because we need to hear from you. In Jesus' name, everyone said, Amen. All right, quick little quiz. You didn't know this would be history class. Our first president's name was, and still is, yes. And our second president's name was, okay, let's start again. Our first president's name was, yes, all right. Second, John Adams. Third, see, it's getting smaller, isn't it? Right, the group is getting, okay. Thomas Jefferson, let's just keep going for kicks. 4, what's that? James Madison. Another James, number 5. James Monroe. Number 6. Andrew, is that right? Yeah, Andrew, Quincy Adams, yeah. Number 7. Andrew Jackson. Some of you remember him. Sweet guy, heck of a cook. Number 8. Martin Van Buren. Number 9. Does anybody know number 9? Do you know number 9? Oh my goodness, William Henry Harrison. Can we give this young lady a hand? She's crushing it. The rest of you hate our country. It's really sad. I love the gusto. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jones, I don't know, anyway. So, and it's amazing, right? Because those are like presidents of our country. I'm leaving a legacy. Nobody will forget my name. Everybody's forgotten your name. Anyway, so Thomas Jefferson was our third president, as has been shared, and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence. And he was advocate for various personal rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, helped shape the ideological foundations of our country, being a sovereign nation. I would say in terms of virtue and morals, that would be like more the Puritans helped shape that and establish that. But in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., you can actually find his Bible, which is extraordinary. And it's named quite cleverly the Jefferson Bible. Anyway, so there it is. And you can see it. And what's unique about it is that Thomas Jefferson decided to omit all the supernatural events in his Bible. And so he literally took out a razor and glue, and he cut out all the miracles, especially of Jesus in the New Testament. And then he, including the resurrection, by the way, and any passage that would portray Jesus Jesus as being divine. He just clipped them all out and stuck them together, and that's why it's really not a Bible, all right? But it's just a book that he cut up. And anyway, the point being this: Thomas Jefferson wouldn't be nodding his head in agreement during this series. He wouldn't like this series. He'd be walking out of this series, because in this series, we've been talking about the miracles of God, specifically the miracles of Jesus Christ as the second person of the Trinity, as the Son of God. And what we've said repeatedly is that Christianity is not only natural, which it is, but it's also supernatural. It's not just physical, but it's spiritual, right? And it's not just temporal, which it offers wisdom and here's how to live, but it's also eternal, right? And so Christianity is these things. We believe that God is able, that he has done, that he can do miracles. And this is what we've been looking at. But as we, just to remind you of last week's message, we talked about this idea of signs. Remember, Jesus refers to his signs and wonders. And we used even the metaphor of a sign, a road sign, a sign to a restaurant or a building or something like that. And the sign is not where all the action is, all right? The sign is pointing to something else, right? So when you're driving down the freeway and you're hungry and it says in and out 2 miles or something like that, then you're like excited, but you don't pull over and hang out at the sign. Are you with me? You want to go to where the sign is pointing. And I say that to say this: the miracles of Jesus are meant to point to Jesus. They're meant to teach us things about Jesus. And so as amazing and wonderful as the miracles are that we read, it's not really just about them, it's what they're pointing to, if that makes sense. So let me start this message by asking you a question. Some of you are like, I thought we already started. Well, we did. All right, but anyway, so here's my question. Do you want God to do a miracle in your life? And the follow-up would be, if so, and because everybody would say yes, but if so, what kind of miracle would be most valuable to you? What kind of miracle would you most want God to accomplish in your life? All right, so let's pick up the story here. John chapter 5 is where we're at. This is actually right after the story of the royal official's son who was really sick, and we talked about that last week, and Jesus healed him. Anyway, John chapter 5 says this: sometime later, so some time had passed, Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and it always says up to Jerusalem, not because it's north, but because it's elevated like Denver, okay? So that's the idea there. Went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals, their holidays, to get together, to sing, to sacrifice, to remember God. Verse 2, now there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, it's my favorite gate, a pool which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by how many? 5 covered colonnades, or coverings that are held up by pillars. You've seen the ancient pillars and columns and that sort of thing. So think of it as like massive porches, 5 covered porches. The sheep gate, this is near the temple area, and it's called the sheep gate because when the Jews were to sacrifice a sheep, guess what gate they would bring them through? The sheep gate. So this is probably the gate that didn't smell the best, but anyway, that's the sheep gate. Probably wasn't super clean, probably didn't smell like a bar of Irish Spring soap, but there you have it. And there's a pool there, Bethesda. I love the smell of Irish Spring, and if you don't, how dare you? But anyway, there's a pool which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. I'll try to go through this quickly because we don't really have enough time to get into textual criticism and that sort of thing. But people always want to know, how can I trust the Bible? How do I know whether or not it's true that these events actually happened in history? And what I want you to know is the Jewish faith and the Christian faith, it is really the one major religion that is rooted in history. Are you guys with me? So the people, the places, the mountains, the rivers, the coins, the kings, the emperors, all that stuff is actually in history, all right? So meaning you can go to these places and learn about these people and that sort of thing, all right? And so it's important to understand because we believe, like the psalmist of 119, verse 160 says, all your words are true. And so that's important because as Christians, we believe that God's word is true because God is true, but not everybody believes that. And there are, wait for it, skeptics in the world. And wait for it, there may be skeptics in the room. And certainly all of us at various times doubt. But these skeptics over the centuries, over the years, have asked, how do I trust the Bible? Well, modern historical scholarship was really beginning to develop in like the 18th century, so like the 1700s, but especially the 1800s, and they wanted to know how reliable the Bible was and that sort of thing. Make sure it wasn't full of folklore and fables like the Three Little Pigs and Star Wars. But actually, Star Wars is true. It's just historical and galaxy far, far away. And there you go. I was going to say Snow White, but Snow White's not doing too well these days. Anyway, well, one of these areas of scrutiny is in the text we just read. And this is really fascinating because skeptics would point out just what I just read. They would say, this is a perfect example of why you can't trust the historicity of the Bible, why it's not true, because there is no knowledge of this pool called Bethesda, right? And in fact, there's no other piece of writing outside of John's gospel that Bethesda is even mentioned. And not only that, there's never been a discovery where there's this pool and then it has 5 colonnades or covered porches. And so it's clear that whoever wrote the book of John was an eyewitness and wasn't around at the time and blah, 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 all these things, right? So this information, year after year, decade after decade, was passed on, was taught, was communicated to, for instance, in schools. And, you take your religious class at Name Your University, and the professor would get up there and say, use this as an example and say, see, this is why you can't trust the Bible. There's never been this pool, Bethesda, and the 5 colonnades, so and so forth, until archaeologists uncovered this pool called Bethesda right outside the temple area. And the reason why they couldn't find it initially, because apparently there was a church constructed on top of this pool. And the reason why the church was there to begin with was because the church was constructed to remember the pool of Bethesda. But it was found, and guess how many covered colonnades it had? Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 6. Whoops. 5, right? Had 5 covered colonnades. So my point in saying all that is to say this: what was used for many years as evidence as to why you can't trust the Bible is today used as evidence why you can trust the Bible. And this has happened not just once, but time and time and time and time and time and time again. We as Christians like archaeology. This isn't to make fun or point out or whatever, but I just do want to communicate this. Mormonism, for instance, has 0 archaeological evidence from the Book of Mormon. Okay? Now, I've talked to my Mormon friends about this, and they have responses that aren't good. But anyway, so there you go. I just want you to know you can go to Israel. You can go to Greece. You can go to these European places and find out where these people in the scriptures actually were. How many of you have ever been to that part of the world before? Maybe Rome, where Paul was at, or maybe, okay, good, about 12 of you. All right, let's travel a little bit more, people. There's a whole world out there. I have never been to these places, so maybe I should get on it. But the point is, and there's more to say about it, is that we can trust the Bible. I love this quote by Dr. Nelson Glueck. He has passed away, but he was probably the most at the time renowned authority on Israeli archaeology. He said this: it may be stated categorically that, listen, no archaeological discovery has ever controverted, blatantly contradicted a biblical reference. It's never happened. Scores of archaeological findings, how many? I don't know, scores, that seems like a lot, have been made which confirm in clear outline or in exact detail, like the 5 colonnades, historical statements in the Bible. And by the same token, proper evaluation of biblical descriptions has often led to amazing discoveries. In other words, Archaeologists in that part of the world will actually use the Bible as one of their kind of maps to know where to dig. Are you guys tracking with me? I just want you to know the Bible's true. Let's keep going. Verse 3, here's a great number at this pool, a big number, big crowd, or a bunch of disabled people. And that's where they used to lie, the blind. So, some of them could walk as if they couldn't see. The blind, the lame, the paralyzed. And so you've got these covered colonnades that are providing shade for people that are in a rough spot. So there's a degree of maybe comfort there, but remember, it's also crowded, and it's also warm, and in fact, it's probably muggy, and in fact, in the summer, it's not just warm, it's really hot, and you've got this ancient sauna thing happening, right? And it might be noisy, and these are people who are unable to care for themselves, unable to really clean themselves, at least well, not to say that it never rained or whatever, but well, and so it probably doesn't smell that great. I'm just saying it's not I know we read pool and we think of vacation destination and resort, and this is not Great Wolf Lodge, okay? Which, actually, that pool might have been cleaner than Great Wolf Lodge, but nonetheless, I'm kidding. I've never been to Great Wolf Lodge, and if you own it, we love you. All right, so, but it's a difficult place, and it's a place where the disabled are hanging out. Now, let me just mention this. We don't know why they were suffering, and people in this world suffer for all different kinds of reasons. True or false? Yeah, true, right? We suffer for all different kinds of reasons. And I shared this before, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But really, here are the 4 reasons. Like, we suffer because the world is bad, it's broken, all right? And that's moral evil, that's natural evil. Natural evil is like storms and earthquakes and tsunamis and diseases and cancer and pestilence and all that kind of stuff. And then also moral evil has entered into the world. And that's why, number 2, we suffer because others do bad. And there are people that do bad things. And guess what? We are some of them. Sometimes we gossip. Sometimes we slander. Sometimes we're envious. Sometimes we lust. Sometimes we steal. Sometimes we're addicted. We're foolish. We're careless. We're all kinds of things. But the point is, number 2, is that sometimes people hurt us. Isn't that true? Sometimes people hurt us. And so I want to say this clearly. We are legitimately victims at times. And some of us feel like, well, I never want to be a victim. Well, when people hurt you, intentionally especially, then that's part of living in this broken world, but you are a victim in that setting, all right? And so we should empathize with those who are suffering. But anyway, there's more to say on that, but let's just keep going here. Number 3 is that we suffer because we do bad. So others do bad. Haven't you found this in your own life? It's like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that, said that, looked at that, bought that, whatever. But our own choices led to something that wasn't good for us. And we've probably all known people who died of emphysema or, because they were big smokers or any number, heart disease because they didn't eat well. And that's not to say all of us will eventually perish, but the point is that sometimes our choices result in suffering. And then the 4th category here would just be simply like we suffer because, well, not that we do bad, but because we do good. And this is called persecution, when you do the right thing, when you say the right thing, when you say a godly thing, you say the good thing. And sometimes it's like, have you ever had that conversation before where you're like, man, I need to talk to you about this or whatever, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, I'm not a know-it-all, I have my own issues, blah, 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 blah. I've taken the log out of my own eye, but I need to share this with you because I love you, and then maybe it doesn't go super well, and that sort of thing, right? So the truth is sometimes we suffer by doing the right thing and by doing the good thing. So we don't know why these people are disabled. We don't know, but there are some reasons why. Now, it's interesting, if you read in your Bible, most modern translations of the Bible go from verse 3, which we just read, to verse 5. And they've skipped verse 4. And that is because they just forgot about it. No, they didn't forget about it. There's a reason for that. The reason why verse 4 is missing from most modern translations in the Bible is because the oldest manuscripts that we have don't have what's written in verse 4. Are you guys tracking with me? Chapters and verses were added like 1,000 years after the Bible was written. But the point is that is that the oldest manuscripts, meaning probably the more reliable ones because they're closer to the original autographs. By original autographs, I don't mean like signing something to, I don't know, like a baseball or whatever, but like the original documents, like John's handwriting as he's writing this account of Jesus' life. The idea is that it probably wasn't in there. Now, what does verse 4 say in the translations that do include it? Well, basically it says this, that on occasion there was an angel that would come down from heaven and stir up the pool waters. And I kind of love this. Have you heard this story before, some of you? Okay. Stir up the pool waters, and then the first disabled person in gets to be healed. Which you know there's somebody who is always coming in second, right? But you just picture this, like the chaos, like the water starts shaking or whatever, and people go. So what I'm saying is, if you were to ask me, Joel, did that actually happen in history? I would probably say, actually, I don't think it did. But I do think it was a legend that was developed. You understand the difference? I don't think it actually happened. I think it was a myth or a legend that actually that was developed where people really believed in it. So, I mean, some of you, people have various superstitions, and they only, wear this or cut their hair a certain day or whatever, all kinds of things. Baseball has like 1,000 superstitions or whatever. But anyway, they're just these traditions that people kind of hang on to. I think that's a little bit what's going on here. The location of this pool being near the temple and this idea, because maybe at one point the water stirred a little bit, somebody got in and their hip went back into the socket. I don't know what happened, but the idea here is that this legend developed, right? And so I don't think necessarily all of the disabled people there believed, but some of them probably did believe or were hopeful that that would happen. It's like they don't have any other options. But they're there, you're like, well, why are they there? Well, one, they can congregate together. Okay, they can at least have the company of each other. And two, those who wanted to help them would know where they were at to be able to feed them and take care of them and encourage them and pray for them and help them. You guys with me so far? All right, so that's probably what's going on here. There's different disagreements about exactly what this is about, but it's probably not in the Bible. But the disabled people, at least some of them, believed that it was legitimate and real. All right, so there you go. Let's keep going here. The story gets fun. Verse 5, one who was there, so one in particular John's going to write about, had been an invalid, which basically means disabled or unable to walk, for 38 years. Is that a long time or a short time? That's a long time. 38 years. How old was this guy? We don't know, but we know he's at least how old? 38 years. Now, if he was in an accident or something happened in battle and whatever, when he was 23, then that would make him, carry the one, I don't know, of 61, something like that. All right, but 30, did I do that right? Yeah, something like that. But anyway, 38 years. And I was thinking, okay, what's 38 years from 2025? Well, that would take us back to the beautiful year of 1987, which some of you don't remember. You weren't around. Others of us were around because I'm not going to say we're old. We're experienced. And 87 brought us gifts like bright colored shirts and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Princess Bride and songs like Walk Like an Egyptian. You guys remember these things? Or Living on a Prayer. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, we got to cut that from the video, whatever online thing. Anyway, or how about U2 came out with their big album, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. Okay, that was all 1987. Now, why do I mention that? Because some of you remember that and you're like, man, that was a long time ago. That's the point. This guy's been suffering for a long time, unable to provide for himself, unable to care for himself, unable to have a family. He's probably lost all hope for the most part at this point. He's just like, I'm resigned to this is how life is going to be. And can I caution us to think that way? I want to caution us to think that this is just how it's going to be. My relationships will never get better. I'll always be lonely. I won't find a friend. I'll always be stubborn. I'll always be worried. I'll always be afraid. My marriage will never be strong. I'll never have the job that I want. Whatever. Life is it just is what it is. Now, I don't know what the Lord has for you, but that is not a Christian attitude. Okay, it's believing God for all things, and I know we don't want to get let down, but neither do we want to live life as a grump, all right? So there you go, and let's keep going here. Verse 6, it says, when Jesus saw him lying there, so Jesus shows up, and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, 38 years, he asked him, do you want to get well? Is that a weird question? It seems like an obvious answer, right? It requires one word, yes or no, But there you go. Why is Jesus asking him this question? Jesus isn't asking this question for Jesus' sake. Jesus is asking this question for this man's sake. He's questioning what he really desires, what he really craves, what he really wants, what he longs for. Because the truth is, people, we tend to say we want something, but we don't really want it, okay? And this is true in my life. I want to eat healthier. Whoops. This is just, right? Many people go to church, but they don't go to worship God. They don't go to give somebody a hug. They don't go to pray for somebody. They don't go to expecting to be changed by God, right? They just are trying to get through Joel's long messages and maybe learn something or whatever, but just go on with their day and what time is lunch, And that is not really a godly Christian approach, right? And so Jesus said, do you want to get well? And that would be the question for us. Do we want to change? Do we want to grow? Do we want to grow with greater spiritual fruit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, right? Do we want to? Let me say this. The want to always precedes the how to. We live in a world that is addicted to how-tos, right? Social media tells us, we run into this video. Oh, I didn't know how you did that, or that's how you do this, or whatever it is. But we want the self-help book, all this stuff. But the want to always precedes it. Okay, so here's my example, silly example. Let's say someone, one of you, really loves, you love playing the accordion. Okay, and who doesn't? But anyway, I don't. But anyway, so you love, and let's say it is you would say it's actually changed my life. And you talk about the beauty of the music, and you talk about how it actually improves coordination and brain function, which is true. I did some research. And how it's good for polkas and all the stuff. All right, so you love the accordion, and you want me to love the accordion. Right? This has happened to me many times, usually with food. And so they buy me you buy me a couple books, you send me YouTube links on how to play the accordion. Let's say you get me a year's worth of private lessons, you're like, oh, it's only 4 times a week. And you're into this, and you even buy me a really nice top of the line accordion, the Pigini Mythos. It's the Bentley of accordions. That's the only time in my life that I'll say that phrase, but it's the Bentley of accordions, and it actually is about $40,000. But anyway, so you get me. There's only one small problem. I have no interest, zero, in playing the accordion like my dad did growing up, which he did, and he was terrible at. But anyway, according to him. But anyway, so the point is think about this. Your desire, haven't we known this? Your desire can't be transferred to me or somebody else. Now, we can influence, we can instruct, we can teach, we can inspire. But at the end of the day, that person's going to want or not want. They're going to desire or not desire. They're going to crave, long for, or not crave and long for. All the how-to means nothing until there's enough want to. And that principle applies to my life. And that principle applies to all of our lives. So, hypothetical situation. Husband and wife are having marriage problems. So they meet with somebody who's not perfect, but they have some, they have some wisdom to offer, right? They have some things that are going to help this couple, some things to say. And so they sit through all the sessions and they meet over and over and over and again, right? But at the end of all those sessions and the end of all those conversations, and they've received all the how-tos, it still comes down to, but do you want this marriage to work? Right? You have a son or daughter, somebody in your life that is truly addicted to video games. And, I'm not anti-video games or whatever. Maybe some of them aren't great. I don't know. But anyway, but the point is, it's wreaked havoc in your life. And there's, or the person you know's life. And there's emotional problems, relational problems, educational problems, spiritual problems. It's hindering their ability to grow, to mature, all the things, right? It's just too much. Going to sleep at 2 a.m, whatever. It's just too much. And so as a parent, there are things that you can do if they're your kid, but once they're an adult or a young adult or whatever, can you control them? No. And the truth is, you could send them articles about, hey, you got to be careful how much time, screen time, all this stuff. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to their want to. You have to have the want to before the how to. It's not uncommon for a doctor to have a serious conversation with a patient and say, I don't mean to alarm you, but if you keep doing what you're doing, you're not going to live for much longer, maybe a couple more years. This conversation happens in doctors' offices, hospitals, all the time. You've got to change your lifestyle, they say. You've got to, mix in some vegetables now and then, You got to get off the Edo diet, Fritos, Cheetos, Doritos, taquitos, all the Edos, right? You've got to get some sleep. You got to be more active. And you're hearing all this information, but you know what? What happens more time than not? Even the threat of death. People are like, I don't really want to. And then we shake our fist at, why do I have liver disease? Well, you've been drinking for years. Why do I have lung cancer? Well, you've been smoking. This isn't rockets. And I'm not saying that's how all the pain that we experience in our lives works out, but the truth is, I want to lean into it. You got to want it. Jesus asked the guy, do you want to get well? Now I was thinking about, how do you know if someone wants to get well? That's a good question, right? I was thinking about that. And even this, how do I know if I want to get well? So here's 5 quick things. Number 1, when they're eager to receive truth and wisdom. Eager is the key word there. Not just kind of whatever, this better be entertaining, but leaning in going, okay, I need that. This is important. This is serious. This is life. This is bigger than March Madness. This is whatever it is. They're eager. Secondly, because some of you are checking scores right now. Secondly, when they own their own failures. Right? Isn't that true? As long as we say, I haven't done anything, and blaming and excusing and whatever, and I'm just Italian and whatever, all the things. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, all the things, at the end of the day, it's yeah, but we do things that are not great, and we got to own them. We got to apologize. Third, when they're willing, or you're willing to lose something that's important or valuable to you for something else that's better. Because life is about making exchanges, is it not? You exchange one maybe good thing or okay thing for something better. This is the life God calls us to. It's not we just add something to our life. We have to make an exchange. Jesus says you die to yourself. Why? So that you might gain true life. And this is the principle. How do you know you want something? When you're willing to let something important to you go. Right? Some people, I mean, they shop too much, they golf too much, they whatever, we all have probably something in our lives, it's just too much, and it's not good for our relationships, it's not good for our walk with God. It's just too much. It's not that it's bad, it's just too much, right? And so are we willing to loosen the grip a little bit? Fourth is when they welcome accountability and help. I could use some help. That's different than, I got this, it's like, no, for your whole life you haven't had this, Like maybe we do need some accountability. And then fifth is when we begin to see tangible progress. Like just growth, not perfection, just step by step by step. See, there are many ways, there are many how-tos, many ways to change, but the start of real change is always going to be this. Do you want to? Do you want to get well? Do you want to get healthier? Do you want to develop the necessary skills so you can get a better job? Do you want your marriage to improve? Do you want to break an unhealthy addiction? Do you want to move past the past? Do you want to grow? Do you want to change? Do you want to be transformed by God? Do you want to see God renew and revitalize your life and your heart and your relationships and all these things? It's like, yes, really? And so he asked him for him. Do you want to? And the guy says this, sir, the invalid says, meaning the disabled person says, I have no one to help me. So does he answer yes or no? No. He immediately goes into blaming. He immediately goes into excusing. If nobody helps me, how am I going to get down into the magical waters that stir up? I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred while I'm trying to get in. Someone else goes in ahead of me. You know what? What he's saying is, Jesus, I just want you to feel sorry for me. Can't we be like that sometimes if we're honest? I would love it if the world just threw me a pity party. And we wait and wait and wait for that day to happen. It will never happen because people have their own problems. And it's not that they won't care in a moment, pray for you, encourage you, hug you, love you. But friends, life is short. I've seen people live with bad stuff for the rest of their lives. They never change. And then they die. And it's sad. And so it starts with ownership, not shifting the blame and excusing. Do you want to get well? Well, nobody can help. Jesus is like, I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you about your circumstance. In fact, I know your circumstances, See, he thinks he needs a little assistance. Nobody's here to help me. Jesus, maybe you can. He doesn't even know his name's Jesus at this point, but maybe you can help me down in the pool when they stir. You're going to hang out with me until those waters start stirring someday. Maybe it's 2 months from now, whatever. He thinks he needs a hand, a little nudge, a little, that's what we think. Like we just need a little boost from God to get what we really need. The man didn't need magical waters. The man didn't need quicker reflexes. The man didn't need a little help from Jesus. The man needed Jesus to be his everything. Do you know that song, kind of an older one, but Draw Me Close to You? Anybody remember that one? And the chorus in it, if you're familiar with it, but it says, you're all I want. The Lord is my shepherd. What's the next line? I shall not want. You're all that I want, as the song says. You're all that I've ever needed, that I've ever really needed. I asked you early in the message, what do you want most? And it's easy to go to, believe me, health stuff, relationship stuff, all the things. But you know what, as Christians, what we should most want is just the presence and the power and the love of Christ in us. And Jesus knows that that's what this guy needs. He says, verse 8, then Jesus said to him, all right, get up, pick up your mat, and get walking. And once the man was cured, and he picked up his mat and walked. Jesus doesn't need to get him to the water. Jesus is the living water. Jesus is all that he needs, right? And so sometimes as people change, sometimes it's a process, and sometimes it's in an instant. And I love what Jesus says here. Basically, he's like, all right, dude, I'm using my word, but all right, dude, get up, get going. That's what he says. It's like, get up. It's almost a command. Just get up, get going. Get up, In other words, he's saying this. Those 38 years of suffering, it's time to leave that life behind. And I've noticed something. Some of us are good at looking back at life. I met with somebody this morning after the service, and she's got regrets, and these are real things. I'm not saying that we're going to remember these things, but I'm also saying this. The Lord says, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. Get rid of everything that slows you down, that hinders you. Chase after God. Leave the past in the where? In the past. You've been forgiven. Have you taken it to the Lord? Yes. Have you been forgiven by Jesus? Yes. Leave the past in the past. Can you learn from the past? Absolutely. So in that regard, yes, let's learn from our mistakes. But let's leave our mistakes in the past and move forward. This is actually the command of God. Some of us, he's telling us this morning, get up and walk. Get up and get going. I remember because, over the years, Joy and I have owned a host of older cars, which are always exciting. And I remember one time I was adjusting the rear view mirror, and it just came off in my hand. And I thought, that's when you know you have a quality car, But I thought, well, no looking back anymore, apparently. Maybe some accidents are in my future. But anyway, so there you go. Leave the past. And then it says this day, the day on which this all took place was a Sabbath, all right? The seventh day of rest and stuff like that. And this was really annoying to the Jewish leaders. It says this day was the Sabbath. Verse 10, and so the Jewish leader said to the man who had been healed, it's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry out your mat. Now, the law is not the biblical law. It's not the Mosaic law. It's not the Old Testament law. It's laws that Jewish religious leaders had created, had added. And they were like, one of our laws was on the Sabbath, you can't carry anything. Look at you carrying that mat that weighs 6 ounces or whatever. It's probably just this really thin mat. And then you also weren't supposed to heal anybody on the Sabbath unless they were near death, which is wild. Anyway, they should have been amazed at Jesus. Instead, they're just nitpicking. We all know people like that. All right, so verse 11, but he replied, the man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat and walk. Does he protect Jesus at this point? See, he, I think, knows that the religious leaders are after Jesus here. Who told you to do this? Kind of thing. And the guy's like, Jesus, or he doesn't know his name, but he's like, this guy did it, he's blaming again. Verse 12, so they asked him, who is this fellow? That sounds like pip, pip, cheerio. Anyway, who told you to pick it up and walk? And the man who was healed, he had no idea who it was, for Jesus had like a ninja slipped away into the crowd, and that was there. Verse 4, the ninja is not in the scriptures. Verse 14, later Jesus found this guy at the temple, right nearby, and said to him, see, you are well again. But he's almost saying, but you're not truly well. So he says this, stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you. Stop sinning. This is what Jesus says a number of times, but stop sinning, something worse. What would be worse than being an invalid for 38 years in the first century? Here's what's worse. Dying in our sin and facing the judgment of God. And guess what? Jesus knows that. Did you notice Jesus doesn't show up to this crowd and wave his finger or say some words and everybody is healed? Jesus knows what we most need. And what we all most need is to be right with him. We most need his righteousness, his forgiveness, his grace and mercy, the new life, the victorious life that comes from him. Verse 15, the man went away, and I love this, told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who made him well. He knew that they were out not to praise Jesus, but they wanted to punish him. And interestingly enough, this is the beginning of Jesus' suffering. This moment right here is the beginning of Jesus' persecution. You see, Jesus healed the man's suffering, and the man started Jesus' suffering. You know what this is called? Ministry. This is called trying to love people, trying to encourage, and then they stab us in the back, or they gossip about us, or they don't, whatever. And none of us are perfect, but Jesus is perfect. Jesus ended this man's suffering. He started Jesus' suffering. I help you, you hurt me. It's part of it. It's part of ministry. And if that happens to you, well, then you are a lot like Jesus. What I want you to know more than anything else is that Jesus is the God who came to love you, pursue you, heal you, adopt you, transform you. He came to rescue you, redeem you, ransom you, restore you, resurrect you. In fact, one day, bodily, he will give you a new body. He will literally resurrect you. More than anything else, whatever miracle you think you need, the greatest miracle is that you know, trust, treasure, delight in, and walk with Jesus Christ. That he is your salvation. That he is your living water. Well, don't you know that sometimes God gets our attention when we're suffering? And other times, God gets our attention when we experience success. Because we enjoy the various blessings, so to speak, of success, but we find that they still leave us empty in the end. We want to show you a story of a man in our church who's got just that story, that God, he kind of had what the world had to offer. God broke through, got a hold of his life. This is 7 minutes. Then we'll end with a song and dismiss you, but it's a powerful story. His name is Todd. I think you'll be encouraged.
And I thought, I had everything figured out. I was on top of the world. The reality was that my whole life was a house of cards. Something had control over me. I had to figure out what it was. I was on my knees and I was desperate for him. I opened the door just enough to let him in. That's what led to eventually him setting me up to collapse and come to my knees to him. My name's Todd from Southern California, is where I was born and raised. First generation of a bunch of farmers from the Midwest. We were coming to church infrequently. It was still going about my life. It was just one little addition to my life, but I was not yet walking with the Lord, just a believer. And my focus was still myself and my career. I was pretty emotionally disconnected from those around me. And I found my worth, my value, who I was in my work. I was a workaholic. I achieved something that so many people in Silicon Valley are trying to achieve, trying to start up a company and be a success. I was able to do that. And I thought, I had everything figured out. I was on top of the world. The reality was, my whole life was a house of cards. The company who bought us, they had a change in management team, and they had a different vision. And I was not part of that vision, and I was walked out the door. I didn't realize it at the time, even though I was financially secure, that how much of an impact that had on me, even though I had everything I thought I ever wanted, cars, fancy home, fancy bank account. I collapsed. Not having that exterior security of, look at me, I'm all well put together, and I wasn't inside. I fell into, I would say it was like high anxiety and depression. Didn't want to leave my house. I just felt insecure of leaving my house. I felt very exposed, and waiting to get to the end of the day where it's like, okay, Todd, in 2 more hours, it's gonna be 8 o'clock. You can just go to bed and it'll be over for tomorrow. That's where I was. I started realizing that something had control over me.
Was that pre-Christ? After? Where did that struggle begin? And you noticed that there was an obstacle, like in internally that you were struggling with?
I was a Christian, but not really walking yet, thinking I had it all figured out and I could figure it out. So I started buying all of these books on psychology and trying to figure out what was ailing me, because I had no control. People would tell me, Todd, just get back to work, get busy, you'll be fine, it's all good. But at the end of the day, I never figured it out. I figured there was something in my subconscious or whatever that was hitting me. So I came to the Lord because of a series of events. We attended a Weekend to Remember retreat, and we were in this huge auditorium, and one of the guys used to pitch for the Atlanta Braves, and he pointed right at me in this huge auditorium of men and said, "You need Jesus." And yeah, I know he was speaking to the group, but that finger was right at me, and it was really impactful for me. So at that point in time is when I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And so I opened the door just enough to let him in to start doing his work within me. And that's what led to eventually him setting me up to collapse and come to my knees to him. And I was desperate for him, and I was praying for him for healing. The Lord provided a healing for me in terms of the right individual with the right skill set to identify things that happened to me when I was a kid that I would always just minimize, say, so many people have so many worse things happen to them, so why am I complaining about my stuff? And after he was able to kind of unburden that stuff from me, heal that stuff, everything just felt quiet and still. There is sin that we hold on to that is not of our choice. As a result, it affects my behavior. It affected my behavior and affected, the fact that, I was sinning too. Ever since then, it's been my focus in life to glorify him and learn more about him and be more like him. Some of the highlights of my week are going to men's Bible study and church services on Sunday. It's been a complete transformation of my heart, dying of myself, dying of the house of cards that I built around me to make myself look impressive that he knocked down, and now just building a strong foundation in him. I was told very lovingly from a Christian therapist that I was Dr. Spock, and I had to look it up. I knew of Star Trek and Dr. Spock because my dad used to watch it, so I had to read about the character, and he was complete logic, no emotion. I've been able to grow tremendously in that area, and my connections with my daughters, not just being there physically as a dad and helping them out with sports or school or whatever, but actually connect with them emotionally, and certainly with my wife now too.
What would you say to someone who might be where you were?
Yeah, so if I were to go back to my previous self and whisper in my ear and try to open my eye, ask yourself, why are you behaving this way? Why do you need to do this behavior? It's not right. There is a reason why. In hindsight, I was soothing the emptiness within me, the pain within me that I shoved down over the years. We do have this God-sized hole in our heart. It's an infinite-sized vacuum. And until we fill it with the right thing, which is our Creator, our Lord, we're going to continue to fill it with other stuff. Coming to the Lord, allowing him just enough of a crack for him to enter into my life. It's a huge transformation, and I'm so blessed to have had the individuals for the last few years be a part of, kind of breaking me down, breaking down the house of cards and building me so I'm able to come to the Lord and have him build me back up on a firm foundation.
Isn't that great? All right. Thank you so much, Todd, if you're in the room, for sharing your story with us. And we just thought it was so compelling, so beautiful, so powerful. Friends, we need Jesus. Okay? We need Jesus more than anything. Carmen's going to sing a song here. If you know the words, kind of sing along. But go ahead and remain seated for now. And then when we leave, we'll just kind of leave this place a little bit more quiet. All right? So, Carmen.